What's going on, everyone? Today is June 8th of 2023. In today's video, we're going to talk about a couple of topics that don't appear to be connected on the surface, but as we will examine in this video, most certainly are. Yesterday, we learned about the death of former WWF champion, the Iron Sheik, the man who Hulk Hogan famously defeated for his first championship back in 1984. This news fell on 6/7, June 7th, which was the same date the Sheik died. One day before his death, the PGA Tour announced that it was merging with Saudi Arabian sports organization LIV Golf. The Iron Sheik was born in Iran, so while he's not Saudi Arabian, understand that numerology is a mystical practice, much like symbols, and the Iron Sheik donned a turban, or more specifically, a kafia or shemag, on his way to the ring. This is what the House of Saud, the Saudi royal family, traditionally wears as well. Now, the synchronicity that I talk about on this channel is most visible through the language of numerology, both dates on the calendar, but also the language we speak, and simple English Gematria, which is a numeric cipher that assigns a number to each letter in the alphabet. The base 4 methods are all based on the alphabetic order, and what I want to focus on are the 2 reduction methods. In these ciphers, also called Pythagorean Gematria, every double-digit number is reduced to a single digit prior to adding it to the equation. And in both reduction and reverse reduction, notice how the name Iron Sheik sums to 54. This is a number that's very significant to LIV Golf. In Roman numerals, LIV represents 54. And rather than the traditional 72 holes played by the PGA Tour, LIV Golf tournaments hold 54-hole tournaments. So they only play 3 rounds instead of the standard 4. And think about how this is a Saudi organization. Using the alphabetic order, the word Saudi sums to 54. In reverse, Saudi equals 81. And 81 happens to be the age that the Iron Sheik passed away at just yesterday. The word Islam also sums to 54. Saudi Arabia and Iran, both Islamic nations, Islam also feeding us the 81 in reverse as well. So the Iron Sheik was a professional wrestler for the WWF, which is now known as the WWE. A couple of weekends ago, the WWE held its most recent pay-per-view event called Night of Champions, which was held in Jeddah of Saudi Arabia. Now, this is not the first video I've made on the LIV Golf Tour, synchronizing up with WWE. If you check the description below, you'll see a video I made in 2022 when LIV Golf hosted its first tournament in the United States. They did so on the same date that WWE superstar Liv Morgan won the Money in the Bank and the Women's Championship. What's also interesting about that is that on that same date, a Saudi Arabian Rocket League team made it to the finals for the first time. And the team they lost to was owned by YouTube star Moist Critical, who is the owner of Moist Esports. And Moist Critical shares a last name and a birthday with Austin Theory, who won the men's Money in the Bank match on that night. What made this especially bizarre is that just recently, Moist Critical started his own wrestling organization. So what I'm demonstrating here is that this study of numerology clues us in on future events as well. And here's a quick post I made talking about Moist Critical starting a wrestling league by the numbers. And This was posted on March 3rd of last year. It's called the MWL, which equals 33, and it featured a match between Chainsaw and Dow Jones, whose name both equal 33. Charlie was even 30 weeks and 3 days after his birthday on that date, 3-3. He even has birth numerology of 33. So, not to get too sidetracked, let's get back to the Iron Sheik. So I talked about how this last pay-per-view for the WWE was held in Saudi Arabia. Well, just one day after that event, another professional wrestling organization held an event called Double or Nothing. And during this event, there was a seemingly random appearance by the professional wrestler Sabu. Now, up until yesterday, I always thought that Sabu was the nephew of the Iron Sheik. However, this is not the case. Sabu is actually the nephew of the original Sheik, which is a different wrestler who's a couple decades older than the Iron Sheik. Now, why do I point this out? Notice how the Sheik was born on June 7th of 1926, and June 7th is the same date that the Iron Sheik passed away. Now, when Sabu showed up at Double or Nothing, he did so in support of another wrestler named Adam Cole. So he accompanied Adam Cole to be his special enforcer in this match. And we've been talking about all these 54s connected to Iron Sheik, whose name sums to 54 in both reduction. Well, notice how the name Adam Cole equals 54 in ordinal. So was this appearance really as random as we thought? Now, in a little bit, I'm going to talk about how the death of Sabu's girlfriend, Melissa Coates, in 2021, reportedly from coronavirus, is also connected to all of this. But first, let's dig a little bit deeper into the numerology of the Iron Sheik passing away. So he died on 6/7, which was the same birth date as the original Sheik, 6/7, or 7/6, as this date is written in most parts of the world. 67 and 76 are numbers that we commonly see associated with death. The phrases human sacrifice and blood sacrifice both equal 67 and 76 with the S exception. On 6/7, notice how the Iron Sheik was 29,670 days old. So once again, Saudi Arabia and Iran are both Muslim nations. And on the Islamic calendar, they don't use solar years like we do with 365 days. Instead, they use a 12-month lunar calendar. And this year is currently 1444 on the Islamic calendar, which began around the time of Prophet Muhammad. The number 1444 is the 38th square number, and the number 38 is closely associated with death. In the base four methods, death, killing, murder, and RIP all sum to 38. This is a number that's coded into the Murder by Numbers poster from 2002. When the original Sheik died back in 2003, notice how Sabu was a span of 38 years and 38 days old. When the Iron Sheik won the WWF Championship from Bob Backlund, he did so in the year 83, which is, of course, the inverse of 38. Sabu is 8,308 days younger than the Iron Sheik. Meanwhile, the 38th prime number is 163. The Iron Sheik died 163 days after December 26th, which is the date that he won the WWF Championship. He also died 1,063 weeks after the original Sheik. So a lot of interesting alignments there, but before we come back to the Iron Sheik, let's take a deep dive into the numerology of this merger between the PGA Tour and LIV Golf. Now, it's kind of strange that a nation like Saudi Arabia, of course, it does have a lot of money, but why the Saudis to come over and take over the game of golf? It almost feels a little bit random, right? I mean, this is a nation that's not known for sporting at all, and suddenly they come along, and while they're calling this a merger, it really seems more like a buyout or a sale. So notice how in this ESPN article from yesterday, they quoted this phrase, under one umbrella. Now, whenever you see quotes in a headline in the media, this tells us that there's likely strong gematria underneath of it. And I want to point out that under one umbrella has the same gematria as Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, 180 and 90. Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, 180 and 90. And consider how these numbers connect to the game of golf. Rounds of golf are made up of either 18 or 9 holes. These numbers found in the gematria of Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Notice how the word golf also equals 180 in Satanic gematria. Saudi Arabia was unified on September 23rd of 1932. And as a result of this, September 23rd is still celebrated as the national holiday in Saudi Arabia. Well, if you measure from that date to the merger on June 6th, notice how Saudi Arabia was 90 years connecting to the gematria and 257 days old. Now, this number 257 also stands out. Now, why is that? 277 is the 55th prime number. When this merger was announced on June 6th, it was on a date with primary numerology of 55. 6 plus 6 plus 20 plus 23. The current CEO of LIV Golf is Greg Norman, who was born in the year 55. When you write the number 55 out in gematria, notice how it syncs up with these golf numbers, 108 and 54. The word terrorism also equals 108 and 54, and remember it was Saudi Arabia who was blamed for the events of 9/11, which we'll dig into shortly as well. The words Saudi and Islam also both sum to 54 and 18. Recall that 54, the number represented by LIV, 54-hole tournaments. This merger was announced by PGA Tour Commissioner Jay Monahan, and his numerology in this incident is so fascinating, particularly how it connects to Greg Norman, the CEO of LIV Golf. So not only was the merger announced 337 days after Independence Day here in the United States, but it was also 337 days before Monahan's 54th birthday. Remember, 54 like live. Now, this number 337 is interesting to me because this is another prime number. 337 is the 68th prime number. In gematria, both PGA and golf sum to 68. And it was the year 68 when the PGA Tour was spun off from the Professional Golfers Association. But the number 68 is important to 9/11. LIV CEO Greg Norman is currently 68 years old. And on the date of the 9/11 attacks, Saudi Arabia was 68 years old. Notice how World Trade Center construction began on the 6th of August, or 6/8, in the year 68. '68 was the same year that President George W. Bush, who was in office during 9/11, graduated from Yale University. 911 was first made the emergency dialing code in the year '68. Right? 911, like the date September 11th. In the year 1968, 2001, A Space Odyssey came out. 9/11 in the year 2001. And think about how the first cell phone call was made on April 3rd of 1973, which was just one day before the World Trade Center first opened, which was on April 4th, the very next day. And don't forget, the World Trade Center had telecommunications towers on top that made cell phone calls possible. So all of this connects. You know, our entire history is scripted by the numbers like this, and it's no different with the news. Of course, this Saudi Arabian takeover of Gulf would fall in line with the events of 9/11. Now, whenever we talk about 9/11, I commonly mention how the number 93 was so significant. The first plane struck the 93rd floor of the North Tower. The plane that struck the South Tower did so as the clock hit 9:03 a.m. And then George Bush addressed the nation at exactly 9:30 a.m. You may recall that Flight 93 was also brought down on that date. Well, the commissioners of PGA and LIV Golf, their birthdays are 9 months and 3 days apart from one another. And look how old the PGA Tour was when they merged with LIV Golf. 93 years and 186 days. Well, 186 is simply the first multiple of 93. 93 plus 93 is 186. And when you think of the two planes that hit the two towers on that date, Flight 11 and Flight 175, you add those numbers, you get 186. When this merger was announced, the United States was 90,186 days old. PGA Tour LIV Golf equals 1,086 in Sumerian. June 6th is also the 157th day of the year. This brings us to the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, the stone cold Mohammed bin Salman, whose name sums to 157 in the alphabetic order. Now, before I get too deep into Mohammed bin Salman, this is actually going to point us to another element of synchronicity. Now, on this channel, especially lately, I've been talking about how significant events in the media also connect to my personal life. And there's this deep prince riddle, as this is all connected to the Crown Prince. We'll get into that later. So first I want to talk about the number 22. You may recall that in December this past year, the World Cup was held in the nation of Qatar. And Qatar is bordered by only one nation, and that's Saudi Arabia. Qatar hosted the 22nd FIFA World Cup this past year, which happened to fall in the year 22. And the World Cup is organized by FIFA, which sums to 22. And 22 is a significant number to soccer, or football as the rest of the world calls it, since there's 22 players on the field at any given time. The PGA Commissioner, Jay Monahan, has double gematria of 22 when we use capital letters. And these capital letter ciphers are very simple. We're just taking the alphabetic order and either adding or mixing capital letters into the equation. In reduction, the word golf equals 22 and 79. And the 22nd prime number is 79. PGA Tour also equals 202. PGA stands for Professional Golfers Association, which equals 709. And this merger was announced on the 79th anniversary of D-Day. D-Day, or the Normandy landings, was an operation that helped define the outcome of World War II. And consider how this connects to September 11th, which essentially defined the war on terror here in the United States. Notice how D-Day sums to 66 in one of those capital ciphers, just like the date June 6th or 6-6. Golf sums to 66 with capital letters. And in the alphabetic order, the name Monahan, the PGA commissioner, also equals 66. Now, 66 is 11 times 6, and this brings us to the most significant part of this riddle, in my opinion. 11 times 6, 66. This merger was announced 6 months and 11 days after the World Cup ended. I guess I got that wrong because it wasn't. So that's not in the post anyways. If I could edit the live stream, I would. But check out the full name of J. Monahan. Using satanic gematria, Joseph William J. Monahan IV equals 1160. And when you take away his nickname, you also get 1019. Now, if you measure from his birthday to the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, you get 116 days. Saudi Arabian CEO Greg Norman was 116 days after his birthday for the merger. Greg Norman was born 11,160 days before Mohammed bin Salman. Saudi Arabia was formed 6,011 days after the PGA was formed. Again, talking about the unification date. And the number 611 is or 116 is an upside down 911. 911 is another prime number, the 156th. The commissioner of the PGA was born 156 days after the tour's anniversary, and the merger occurred 156 days after his birthday. Notice how the name Commissioner J. Monahan also syncs up with the date 9/11, as 9/11 is the 254th day of the year. Furthermore, the name J. Monahan has gematria of 923, and Saudi Arabia has its national holiday on 9/23. So we've been talking a lot about significant disasters and elements of war, right? 9/11, D-Day. Well, what about something a little bit more contemporary, like coronavirus, perhaps? Coronavirus, I would gather, is sort of like the world government waging war on the public. And as I mentioned earlier in this video, Sabu used to date pro wrestler Melissa Coates, who also acted as his valet for a while. And in 2021, Melissa Coates died after a battle with COVID-19. It was reported that she suffered blood clots in her leg, and she wound up dying in her sleep in 2021. So I'm going to talk about how everything that's playing out on June 7th with the death of the Iron Sheik, again, dying on the birthday of the original Sheik, June 7th, is all tied in. Now, we start with the date June 7th, or 6/7. This represents the number 67. And 67, another prime number, the 19th prime. This is a number significant to Islam, who uses the lunar calendar, the moon with a 19-year cycle, the Metonic cycle. Now, 67 is also the gematria in reduction of COVID-19. So here we have a virus with the number 19 in it, and it sums to the 19th prime number, 67. Well, the 67th prime number is 331. And check out how the name Melissa Lavinia Coates in Gematria sums to 331. Melissa died exactly 67 weeks after March 11th of 2020. And that's significant because March 11th, 2020 is the date that the coronavirus was declared a pandemic by the World Health Organization. And now the Iron Sheik dying on 6/7. Now, think about the term coronavirus. If you look up the word corona in the dictionary, you come to learn that the corona is the name of the upper atmosphere of the sun, and it's visible only during a total solar eclipse. So there's this strong connection between coronavirus and eclipses. And of course, we are currently in the period between the two great American eclipses here in the United States. The phrase total solar eclipse also sums to 67 in reduction. In Latin Gematria, total solar eclipse sums to 704. And I consider Latin Gematria to be the most significant method outside of the base 4. Now, if you measure from the death of Melissa Coates to the date that her boyfriend, Sabu, appeared on AEW television, it was exactly 704 days. And the name Melissa Lavinia Coates also sums to 74 using the reduction method. Now again, I want to look at the date that the Iron Sheik won the WWF Championship. He did so during Sabu's 994th week since he was born. Then, the Iron Sheik died 994 weeks later. Well, 994 is the English Gematria of total solar eclipse. English Standard, the other cipher on this screen, which uses the current alphabet as opposed to the original Latin order. Total solar eclipse also equals 202 in ordinal. And when the Sheik won the title, it was 202 days after the original Sheik's birthday. But there's so much more in this measurement. So again, we're measuring from the Iron Sheik, or the original Sheik, to when the Iron Sheik became the champion. So we saw the 202, total solar eclipse. Well, what if we look at the number of months? You get 690 months. The word eclipse equals 69 in ordinal. In reduction, eclipse equals 33. And on this date, he was also exactly 3,003 weeks old. The original Sheik was also 57 years old. And this is the Hebrew gematria of the word eclipse. Finally, he was also 21,021 days old. And the numbers 57 and 21 are the gematria of moon in English. And again, the Islamic calendar primarily based on the moon. There's some more interesting prime number connections with the commissioner of the PGA and his birthday. It all syncs up really well, but before I end this video, I want to talk about a little bit of a synchronicity that I had with all of this. Now, especially as of recent on this channel, I'm a lot slower to call things a conspiracy or a ritual. And this has a lot to do with what's been happening to me recently. So if you caught my super stream number 51, you saw that I took a break from numerology for a few weeks, and this was because of the recent passing of my cousin. My cousin April, who died in the month of April. And the numerology of this was kind of alarming, especially since I made a video about the death of my other cousin on a highly connected date. And when it comes to numerology, it's like, yeah, we are uncovering secrets of the occult and, potentially fake news stories, but just because something happens by the numbers does not mean it's fake. And all you need to do is examine your own life in order to understand this. Now, in my post on my cousin, I talked about how it was connected to the Foo Fighters and Kurt Cobain. Now, this may seem really random. If you've been following my work, it's not. I live in Milwaukee, and in nearby Marquette, we had the death of a student at Cobain Hall. And Cobain sounds just like Cobain, which led me on this other rabbit hole. Well, my cousin had a memorial gathering on Saturday, June 3rd. And when her mom showed up, she was wearing a Nirvana t-shirt. And I asked her, like, is there a reason you're wearing that shirt? And she was like, no, I don't know. Something just urged me to put it on this morning. And I was like, well, just so you know, a few weeks ago, I did this post connecting April's passing to Kurt Cobain. And that was kind of like a shocking moment to her. It helped wake her up to this other side of reality. And I said, yeah, it's probably April nudging you from the other side that she's still around or she's free of suffering, as, the word nirvana is a Buddhist concept, which is sort of akin to heaven in Christianity. So with all that, I wanted to share this. On June 7th yesterday, again, the date 6/7, I got a text from a friend of mine, and he told me that his old roommate was recently in an ATV accident and was on life support, but he wasn't going to make it. It was highly unlikely. And the fact that he texted me this news on 6/7 stood out because his name sums to 67 in Gematria. And this was the friend that I went to watch the 2017 total solar eclipse with. And his name has matching 67 and 202 Gematria with total solar eclipse. Now, his last name is McNeil. And the roommate who had the accident and looks like he might not make it, his name is Neil. So this brings us to the fact that yesterday was Prince's birthday. So we've been talking about Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. And think about how the Sheik died on Prince's birthday, June 7th. Well, the name Prince equals 65, and yesterday would have been Prince's 65th birthday. Prince also equals 97. And yesterday would have been the 97th birthday of the original Sheik. But here's what's crazy, is that Prince's real last name is Nelson. And if you look up the etymology of the name Nelson, it means son of Nell or Neil, which is why it's also connected to Nielsen. So my friend McNeil texts me about the death of a guy named Neil on this same date. I mean, that's the kind of wild stuff that always trips me out when I'm doing this study here in numerology. And there's so many more synchronicities in this. I could really go on forever. For instance, my friend Jason, on yesterday's date, he was 2016 years old. Or, I'm sorry, of course he wasn't that old. He was 216 weeks old. And consider how Prince died in the year 2016. Now, when Prince died, Jason was... we're looking at his death here. Look how old Jason was. 31 years and 190 days old. So think 3119. Well, Prince, meanwhile, was not only 319 days after his birthday, but he was also 3,019 weeks old. Furthermore, he died 190 days after Jason's birthday. 190, like 19. And again, 67, the 19th prime number. Jason was also 235 days after his birthday yesterday. 235. And that's interesting because Prince's birthday falls 235 days after his birthday. Finally, if you measure from the death of Prince to yesterday's date, you get 2,603 days. Now, the number 263 is the 56th prime number, which connects to the primary numerology yesterday, 56. So, just to demonstrate, numerology is this infinite web that we are basically living inside of this holographic reality. And sure, you know, maybe something in the media might be staged or fake, but why do things in our life also connect? These are the mystical mysteries that continue to fascinate me, and I hope fascinate you as well, the deeper you dig and the more you look. All right, everyone. I think that'll do it for this video. I think I filled your head with enough for today. If you enjoy the work, please do feel free to consider subscribing or joining at the website. Those links can be found in the description below. But until next time, peace, love, God bless. See ya.